Right. Appreciate everyone for joining us for Coach Franklin's weekly press conference. We'll start with an opening statement from Coach, and then we'll open up to questions.
Hope everybody's doing good. Appreciate you being here. Just quickly to kind of hit a couple things after watching the tape from Purdue. After watching the tape, I thought we got better again last week in a lot of different areas, which is great. One of the things that obviously you guys had a bunch of questions on early in the year is I think we're playing more disciplined football. We had three penalties for 26 yards. One was interesting. I've never seen this before. We got a 6-yard penalty. So the one we jumped off sides, they gave us a 6-yard penalty. I've never seen that before in the stats and on the field. Obviously, it was supposed to be 5 yards. We had got 66 players in the game, which was awesome. And then I thought we started fast, offensively with a touchdown and defense with a 5-play drive resulting in a punt. So those things were great. Areas for growth, creating more turnovers, causing fumbles, recovering fumbles, and interceptions would help us in a lot of ways. And then, I think we take a lot of pride in being a developmental program. And, when the 3s and 4s got in there, the experience, I think, is really good for them and good for us. But we did not play up to the standard. Guys got in there, they got to be able to execute and play at a high level. And it's a tremendous opportunity that they're getting, and they need to approach it that way. So making sure guys that are preparing the right way as if they were the starter every single week, so when their number's called, they're ready. Getting into Minnesota, PJ Fleck, who I've known for a long time, came and visited us when we were at Vanderbilt, came and visited us actually here at Penn State when we first got here. I've known PJ for a long time. He's done a really good job. When you kind of look at their roster, I'm always interested in looking at how people are building their rosters. They got 19 players. I think that's accurate. From the transfer portal, we have 9. I don't think 19's a lot. As you guys know, we're not a huge transfer portal team, not against the transfer portal by any means, but look at kind of filling spots. And I even think their number 19 in today's college football is fairly low, but I think that's always an interesting thing to look at each week and study. When we kind of get into these guys, their offensive coordinator, Greg Harbaugh, which is also an interesting one. It looks like Harbaugh, but in their pronunciation guide, it's listed out as Harbaugh, which was surprising. I'm glad I checked that before coming on. But it's done a really, really good job. They're an 11 personnel and a 12 personnel team. They mix it up. I describe it as a pro-style offense. Their stats that really stand out is fewest turnovers. They're ranked 3rd in the Big Ten and 13th in the country. Third down offense, they're 5th in the Big Ten and 18th in the country. And then red zone offense, they're 7th in the Big Ten and 47th in the country. The quarterback who transferred from New Hampshire, I think, is playing really well. 67%, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But on top of that, I think in the last 3 or 4 games, he's done a really good job of protecting the football. Their running back, number 1, Darius Taylor, is a big back. Has been playing really well for the last 2 years. And then their wide receiver, Daniel Jackson, who's a redshirt senior, who's playing well for them as well. Their defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, I've been following his career kind of for a while. He was the defensive coordinator at James Madison when they were, playing very, very well and winning a bunch of games. Then he went to Rutgers and now has been, at Minnesota the last couple of years and done a very, very good job. I would describe them a lot like how we used to be, probably with Bob Shoop and Brent Pry, 4 down, but a little bit of more of a too high safety shell, quarters and quarter half. They kind of remind me a lot of, the better defenses in the Big Ten. They remind me of kind of the old Michigan State defense, kind of remind me of Iowa. They're going to make you earn it. They're going to line up. They do a really good job with their run blitzes, but they're going to line up and play hard and play fast and play physical, and that's showing up. They're 5th in the Big Ten and 12th in the country in scoring defense. Total defense, they're 5th in the Big Ten and 11th in the country. Takeaways, they're 1st in the Big Ten and 10th in the country. And then passing defense, they're 6th in the Big Ten and 17th in the country. So really good stats. It's also telling, right, that you could be 5th in the Big Ten and in the top 10 in the country in a lot of statistics. So obviously our conference plays really good defense. A lot of guys that stand out to us. Their linebacker number 45, Cody Lindenberg. Their defensive end number 17, Jaw Joyner. Joyner. Their defensive end number 92, Danny Strigo. And their cornerback number 5, Justin Wally. Their true freshman safety, number 3, Coy Parrish. I've been very impressed with him. I think he's got 5 interceptions. Played really well in high school. I think it was the MVP of the Army All-American game. He's flying around making big plays for them. As a true freshman, he's been impressive. So playing really well on defense, and then special teams. I've known Bob Ligashevsky, their defense coordinator, for a long time. An old PSAC guy at IUP. Has been all over the place. Got an extensive resume both in the NFL and major college football. Again, Coy Parrish is a kick return guy and a punt return guy, doing some good things for him. And then their kicker, Dragon Kesic, is a difference maker for them, in our opinion. So it'll be a challenge. It's a tough place to go play. A beautiful stadium that they built a couple years ago. They get really good support. And we're going to have to go and play well to find a way to get a win on the road here in the Big Ten. So appreciate your time. Open up the questions.
Let's go to Rich Garcella, followed by Frank Bodani.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Rich, back in your room.
Yeah, I've been banned.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. You always make turnover ratio very important. Does it take on even greater importance this week, considering Minnesota has 16 interceptions?
Yeah, I think number one, turnover ratio and explosive plays are the 2 most important stats in football. It's been that way for a long time. Something that, I don't think you can start to preach one week. It's something we talk about all the time. But obviously when you're playing a team that's doing a really good job at it, not only creating turnovers, but also protecting the football, then they're doing a good job. And I think, to be honest with you, that's PJ, PJ and his background, at Rutgers with Coach Schiano. I mean, I think a lot of the well-coached teams understand before you can learn to win, you got to learn how not to lose. And you put the game in jeopardy by playing sloppy football and turning the ball over and giving up big plays. So, he's done a really good job of that. But yeah, it's always emphasized. We won't emphasize it more this week because it's just one of our staples that we're going to talk about and work on every single week and every single day. I think you guys have heard me say before, when we hire new coaches, one of the non-negotiables is we're going to work ball security every single day as a period, and we're going to work this ball disruption period every single day as a period. A lot of times guys say, well, we'll get that during practice, I'm a big believer in that. So it's not something we're going to do different this week. It's something that we constantly are talking about.
Let's go to Frank Bodani, followed by Mark Woganrich.
Hey, James. Good afternoon to you. How are you?
Hey, Frank. You too, man.
Good. Just talking about turnovers, you guys on defense ranked really highly in several categories. Why, though, do you think not creating the turnovers? What can you point to for that, and how does that change?
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. It's a couple things, right? I think first of all, we're playing some of the best defensive football in all of college football right now. Number one, and there's always going to be something that is an area that you need to work on and get better, and we embrace that. I think the first thing is shots on goal is what we call it, is making sure the second man in is stripping and punching at the football. A few years ago, we were causing a decent amount of fumbles, but not recovering them. So making sure we're doing both at a high level. And then I think we're doing a pretty good job of PBUs and contested catches. And we got to come down with a few of those. There's been a couple that are 50-50 balls, and the way the rules are in college football, the tie goes to the offense. We got to find a way to win a few more of those, and we got to get other guys involved. Rather than Jay Reed. Jay Reed's been the one guy that's been really disruptive in terms of turning the ball over. So, the next step is not just the confidence of breaking the ball up, but actually going after the ball. So most importantly, I want to continue to play great defense, which I think we are doing. I don't think Tom Allen and the defensive side of the ball is getting enough credit for how good of defense we're playing. So most importantly, I want to make sure that we're doing that and continuing to do that. But when you're looking for areas of improvement and where you can take the next step, I think, Frank, that's a fair question, and an area that we would love to take the next step and improve there, because those things change games.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich, followed by Mike Gross.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, Mark. How are you?
Good, thanks. After the Purdue game, you discussed this a little bit about the Big Ten being ready week in and week out. How would you gauge then the Big Ten this season and how it's preparing teams like yours for the playoffs?
Yeah, as you know, Mark, I don't love to kind of talk about a whole lot more than Minnesota and the team that we're playing this week. What that's preparing for us down the future. I'm totally focused, and I want our team to be totally focused on Minnesota. I get the question and appreciate the question and understand the question, but if I start talking about things other than Minnesota, then so do our coaches and so do the players, and we lose focus, and then we come out and don't play well, and then my press conference next week is miserable because you guys are all over me because we didn't play the way we should have played. So there'll be a time and a place to talk about that in great detail. But right now, our focus is on Minnesota completely.
Last question from Zoom, Mike Gross.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks. Up until a couple weeks ago, getting off to sluggish starts was supposedly an issue. And then the last couple of weeks have been a total exception to that. So is there anything that you've done better, let's say, scripting the plays early and then executing them, anything like that explains why you've got off to great starts the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that our process has changed, but no different than the question I just got a minute ago about turnovers. Hey, okay, let's discuss this. We're not getting as many as we normally have gotten. Why? Let's go back and study the tape. Let's study the things we're doing in practice. The years that we've had a bunch, what were we doing? What were we emphasizing to just make sure that we're turning over every stone and finding ways to improve? And it's the same way with starting games. What are our tendencies? Doing some self-scouts. What are our tendencies in those areas? How can we break those tendencies? And then, making sure that the coaches are doing everything in terms of dotting I's and crossing T's, and that we're practicing, that way as well. So I would not say that really anything has changed. But when you go a couple weeks and you give up a bunch of yardage on defense and maybe a field goal, and on offense you don't score points, whether they're touchdowns or field goals in opening drives, and you want to start faster, then you spend a little bit more time talking about it and looking at it. But I wouldn't say anything dramatically changed, Mike. Just making sure that, again, we're as detail oriented as we can possibly be. I think last week's a good example. We're rolling and we jump off sides on a tempo play, which made it harder, which, you'd prefer not to put yourself in those situations, but we were able to overcome it and still go down and score. So nothing dramatic, Mike. More just about our process and maybe a little bit more self-scout.
Over here on the right, Mark.
Thanks for your time as always, James.
You too.
How close did you come to playing Grunk in that game, and can you discuss the balancing act between making sure somebody like Bo gets the snaps that he deserves against making sure your third teamer is ready to go in the case you need him?
Yeah, I think that's always the fine line, right? Like, Bo needs and deserves as many reps that he can get. He's been an unbelievable teammate. He's been a huge part of our offense and our system. And just like we saw a few weeks back, was able to go in there and win a game for us. And that development is critical. And like I've said to you before, whether it's practice or games, if you're trying to get three guys ready, a lot of times you end up getting no one ready. The other thing is you guys don't get to see it, but Grunk is getting pretty much live scrimmage work, about 24 reps every Sunday. Some days are total live, the quarterback included. More days than not, it's live except for the quarterback. But he's getting a ton of those reps that Bo never gets. So it's a fine line. But I think every rep that Bo can get is important, and I think when Grunk is in a similar position, he'll want those reps as well. Whether it's as the starting quarterback or the backup quarterback, he's going to want every rep he can get to.
In the middle, John.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, John. How are you?
Doing good. You mentioned that the 3s and 4s didn't play up to the standard as a group, but were there any individuals with the 2s, 3s, and 4s that you thought earned more playing time coming out of Purdue?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of not only how they played, but also guys that just have gotten to the point from a redshirt standpoint that they can play now and not burn their year. So I think you guys are pretty aware of who those guys are. Tyseer Denmark is an example of that, both as a punt returner as well as a wide receiver. Egan Boyer now falls into that category. He's doing some good things for us. Both of the running backs, Quentin and Corey fall into that category. Corey probably a little bit more than Quentin right now, not based on production, but just based on games available. Quentin's already played in 3 games, so we really only have one more game with him during the regular season, so we just got to decide this week, is it this week or next week? And we're going to let those 2 guys compete, and whoever gives us the best chance to win this week will be the guy that's green-lighted as the 3rd. And then defense, Xavier Gilliam, the 2 defensive ends. Granville now is full go. He can play for us. Harvey's full go, can play for us, not having to worry about any of those things. Specca is in this situation like Quentin Martin. He's only got 1 game to play, so we got to be strategic about that, but having him ready to play. Vabu, Belgrave, Shorter, and Mitchell fall into that category. Kenny Wosley's another one who's only got 1 game left to play in these last 2 games, so we want to be strategic there. So combination of how they played in the games, but also what they have available. It's both those things.
In the front, Neil.
Hey, James.
Hey, Neil. You mentioned it's a tough place to play. You guys haven't been up there a lot. Can you learn from anything from the last trip up there that you can apply this time around, similar time of the year, whatnot? No, long time ago. Different team, a lot of different coaches, things like that. But obviously, we understand what the environment will be like. We got an understanding of what the stadium will be like, weather that time of year, how this coach builds his roster and how this coach builds his team, and how they want to play their winning style of football. All those things, yes, but. Different players, a lot of different coaches in both organizations.
On the right, Tyler.
Hey, James.
Hey, Tyler.
Luke Reynolds, now that you had a chance to review what he did in a little bit more detail, is he a guy who's showing the ability, and I know he's played each week, but with some expanded work, that come postseason play, down the stretch here, you can kind of maybe reevaluate what he's capable of doing compared to maybe what his initial role was on the field for you guys this fall?
Yeah, can you be a little bit more direct in what you're asking?
Now that he's done some things in games, made some plays, made some blocks, put some things on film for you that's a little more tangible than just what you saw on the practice field perhaps, is his potential role within this offense in 2024 something that you and the staff, despite the presence of Tyler Warren, could see yourselves continuing to evaluate and maybe rethinking on compared to where he was coming into the fall?
Yeah, we love Luke's development and what he's been able to do this year. And that will continue to evolve as the season goes on. But again, when you got Tyler Warren in that room, and Khalil's a guy that has done some great things for us as well. He was all over the tape that I showed the team on Sunday blocking. He blocked extremely well. And is obviously, as you guys know, is a threat in the passing game. So that's a really competitive room, and Coach Howell's done a really good job of developing that room and coaching that room. And I don't see anything significantly changing right now based on opportunities and circumstances. It's a lot of things that can go on in between now and the end of the season. But I love his approach every single day, how he practices, how he works. I think he's got a very, very, very bright future, and we're excited about it. But, I think you are promoting us take Tyler Warren off the field, and probably not going to do that.
In the middle, Audrey.
Hey, James, how are
Hey,
you?
Audrey.
You'd mentioned post-game with Abdul Carter, obviously, a lot of times it looks like he's playing through potential holding penalties that aren't getting called. Have you maybe had to try to say anything to Abdul or is Dion to try and get him to kind of keep playing? Because I'm sure it's maybe – do you think it's frustrating for him at all?
Do you see frustration showing up on the field when you watch him?
No, I mean, but he did celebrate when he finally got one call, which to me was kind of like, hey, this guy's...
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, though, is to me, if it's showing up on the field where he's getting frustrated and now his effort changes because he feels like, hey, I can't get a call here, I'm getting held every time, then that would be a concern. But the guy is playing with phenomenal motor. I mean, the play he made on the screen was phenomenal. Again, for us, we try to spend a lot of time talking about real football people studying the tape, NFL scouts, GMs, other college coaches. And when you watch the tape, the guy is impactful. Whether it's sacks, whether it's tackles for loss, whether it's holding calls, whether it is obvious that they have a specific plan in how they're trying to limit his impact, keeping tight ends in, keeping running backs in, always sliding in his direction so there's a double team between the tackle and the guard. Like, he is impacting the game in a number of ways, which creates opportunities for other guys on our defensive line and within our defense. and causes a lot of headaches. So he's been great. His attitude's been great. He is coachable. He is becoming more and more of a leader every single day. One of the cool things for me to do is after the game, for some reason I can always find his dad and his mom in the stands. He has a hard time finding them sometimes, but I always seem to find them, and I got a great relationship with them. So no, I'm more focused on how is he impacting the game, and how is his effort and his motor, and those two things, are at a really, really high level, and I think a lot of people are noticing it. And I love my favorite play in the game last week was the screen, just because the effort and the burst that he played with, and not just him. You watch that clip, Zane Duran is chasing the ball from behind. Bunch of guys are doing it, and those things lead to good things when you got all 11 guys running to the ball and playing with great motor and enthusiasm. And I think the other thing I would say is, early in the year as he was transitioning to D end, he had a few, jump off sides penalties and things like that, which all great defensive ends do, but those are limiting. So now I think people are focusing on all the positive things he's doing, not trying to balance, the sack and the jump off sides. He's less and less of those things and more of just, straight out production.
Front middle, Seth.
Hey, James.
Hey, Seth.
You talked a couple weeks ago about making sure, not to lose after one game, turning that into 2 or 3. What does it say about this team to not just win these past 2 games, but do so in a pretty complete 4-quarter manner?
Yeah, I think it shows maturity. I think it shows growth. I also, at a place that I think is challenging to do it, I think they do a really good job of tuning all the outside noise out. And I think that's, in 2024, that's harder to do than I think people realize. It's easier for some more than others. Tyler Warren, I think he's still got a house phone, a rotary house phone, so I think it's easier for him than most. But I think being able to stay focused and tune out all the other things, I think comes with maturity and growth, and I think this team's doing a really good job of managing it. I also think Chris Peterson and Greg Kincaid, and definitely Paul. Where's Paul? I also think do a good job of that as well. I know it maybe frustrates you guys sometimes, but like having a plan that guys only get so many, interviews a week because, they're full-time students, they're playing football and they have some media obligations as well. So making sure that these things are balanced and they're not getting hammered throughout the week with all these media requests as well, which also something that they have to do and we encourage and embrace. But balancing all these things, I think, is also important. And I think this staff does a really good job of helping with that too.
Back left corner, Andrew.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, Andrew.
You mentioned Ty Howell. I know he inherited some of the prestige that Penn State has in tight ends. Guys like Mike Gesicki and Pat Freiermuth predate him. But do you think Ty gets enough credit for the development in guys like Brenton and Theo and Ty and so forth?
No, I don't think it's talked about enough. There's no school in the country, there's no program in the country that is doing what we are doing with tight ends right now and really over the last 10 years. And Ty Howell has come into that position as a Penn State letterman and I think has taken it to a whole nother level. We're recruiting the best tight ends in the country. We're developing the best tight ends in the country. It's a competitive room. You got to embrace that. And then you just look at what's happening after they get done playing at Penn State. They're all getting their degrees and then they're all getting drafted, and the majority of them are getting drafted very high. And then like, you look at the Tyler Warren situation. Tyler Warren had a pretty high draft grade last year, came back, and I think it's been a win-win. I think he's going to be the first tight end drafted. Is having a great year. Is having a ton of fun with his teammates. And that's what you want, right? You want it to be a great situation for everybody. And if you're a great tight end in the country, and specifically in the state of Pennsylvania, I don't know how you couldn't come here. Like, there's just too much history, there's too much data, and there's too many things saying that you don't need to go anywhere else. You can stay home and get everything you want in terms of your college career, and also setting yourself up for your future. And I really appreciate you asking that question.
In the middle, Shane.
Hey, Shane.
Coach. You mentioned Minnesota's defense. They do have 16 interceptions. When you look at turnover ratio, how do you balance the aggression versus trying to, kind of not put yourself at risk? How do you approach that?
Well, it's interesting, and it probably is a good question, because it also helps me go back and kind of follow up the other question, because part of it is they're a zone team. And when you're playing zone defense, the argument there is you have the ability to have your eyes on the quarterback, which typically can lead to you being in a better position for interceptions. Playing man coverage, you're going to challenge more routes, but then you have to transition from eyes on the guy you're covering to losing eyes on him and trying to find the ball. Where in zone coverages, more times than not, your eyes are on the quarterback the whole time. So I think that's probably one of the big differences, and goes with the aggressiveness that you're talking about. There's a very big difference in my mind between aggressiveness in zone coverage and going after the ball, and aggressiveness in man coverage. It is a skill that is hard to develop. It's one of those traits that you either have or you don't, and you have the ability to take your eyes off of the guy you're covering once you're engaged, and turn and find the ball. And then also turn and find the ball in a way that the ball's going to be thrown. I know it sounds simplistic, but where you turn your eyes, the trajectory of the ball, if they're going to make that type of throw, are you looking back or are you looking up? Little things like that, you'd be amazed, make a huge difference. So, and that kind of answers, there was somebody else had a question earlier about how do you create more turnovers. It kind of goes hand in hand with your question, and they're more of a zone-based team, and we're more of a man-based team. The thing that they're doing a really good job too is they're one of the better pass defenses teams in the country, and turnovers. So combination of both.
Last question on the right, Daniel.
How are you doing today, James?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
What is that hat?
Green Bay Packers.
Oh, it is.
Yes. Old school.
What's your two connection with the Packers? I know Rich. Yeah, I know Rich. But I'm saying, what's the connection with you two?
I was 4 years old and thought Brett Favre was pretty cool.
And where'd you grow up?
Southern Maryland and then Bel Air, Maryland.
And Audrey, where'd you grow up? Where did Rich grow up? Huh. Makes a lot of sense. Is that who could use that slogan?
Dallas used to.
You're a shareholder? I thought the shareholder was passed down. I don't think anybody can be. Yeah, I work there. I'm pretty familiar. Yeah, I'm pretty familiar. I remember the shareholders meeting that was like down the block. Yeah. Let's get back to your question.
You look at these past 4 games for Drew at quarterback, where getting injured at Wisconsin, coming back in a tough game against Ohio State, but then these past 2 games, really playing at a high level. Have you learned anything new about him or seen anything different in how he handled these ups and downs over the past month or so?
Yeah, I think he's played at a very, very high level for 2 years. I think he's played at a really high level for 2 years. I think all the data backs that up. He continues to get better. He continues to refine his process. He continues to pour into his teammates and getting on the same page with them, whether it's the O-line, who I think he probably spends the most time with, both personally and as a player. His approach, his game day demeanor, his ability to run and extend plays. One of the things I think I've talked to you guys about before, I know me and Danny O'Brien have had a lot of these conversations, is it's not just the touchdown to interception ratio, because you can get lucky there a little bit. It's also grading interception-worthy decisions and interception-worthy throws. Like, okay, you made a bad throw and the defender dropped it. Well, that's still graded as an interception-type decision and throw. There's not a whole lot of that on his film. And I think his biggest improvement from last year is his mobility. It's not just, okay, here's a guy that can move in the pocket. Here's a guy that can get first downs. And I think I talked to you guys about this before. When you look at the drives where he has picked up a first down with his feet, we've scored on almost every single one of those drives. I don't think he's getting talked about enough. I don't think he gets enough credit, and I know why. But I'm very, very proud of the young man and how he plays and how he goes about his business. His humility is phenomenal at that position in today's day and age. Very, very, very proud of him and his development and how he's handled it all. It's impressive. It's impressive. So, very, very pleased with how he's playing. And I think if you, besides yourself, you talk to a lot of football people out there, I think a lot of people would feel the same.
Thank you very much, Coach.
Thank you.